many things, and I like to think nothing surprises me. So I try to take it all in stride, no matter what tomorrow brings. Oh yeah, keep me guessing, holding on tight for the ride of my life with you. All I can say, there's no such thing as an ordinary day.
Well, good morning, y'all. How you doing? Yeah, we're in a series called Destinations. I want to thank Andy Stanley and the team at North Point. They produced this stuff. I'm ripping them off generously, okay? So I'm going ahead and admitting that I'm borrowing great stuff from a great pastor at North Point Church. So I would encourage you to grab the book that goes along with this series called The Principle of the Path, and it will help you. It'll go further than I can go from the platform. But these are great principles, and I'm grateful for them. And so if you want to go further, that's how you can go further with this series. Now, I have something to say to you that's really important for you to know, is that I can outlast you. I can outlast you. You can take you and me to any city in the world. You can spin us both around 3 times, and I can be lost faster than you can and longer than you can. I promise. Like, you really? Yeah, I have a challenger. Who's challenging me? Really? You? Really? Okay, him? Okay. You're confessing his sins. Thanks so much. That's what spouses do all the time, isn't it? Like, you confess the other's sin. Like, well, yeah, the lost bozo over here. Okay, thanks a lot. So we offer marriage counseling. Okay, it's all good. So here's the thing, I can outlast most of you. Some of you guys might rival me. You might be there, but it'd be pretty tough. And so I just don't know if you can really get there, get as lost as I can, as fast as I can. But I can outlast you, but guess what? I can also outfound you. Do you know why? Because I admit that I'm lost faster than you do. Because I always have a sneaking suspicion I might be lost. I always think I could be lost. So I'll stop and ask directions, contrary to what popular myth is about men, that they won't ask directions. No. Because I always have the sneaking, lingering suspicion that I might be lost. I might not know exactly where I am, so I don't mind stopping and asking directions or finding someone who's already been there and ask for help. I will ask for a lot of help. I do that in life, like driving, but I also do it in like pastoring this church. I got a lot of help. I've got a lot of coaches, a lot of people that I rely on and ask for help from, and I seek wisdom. I seek people outside of me that can help me understand where we are and what we need to do next. Yeah, and I know, guys, it's really super hot. If you guys would give more, we could pay for the AC. Okay? I'm just kidding. You're giving great. I really don't know what's wrong with the unit. We've got them set to 70, and it's running at 79. When I checked, well, it's probably 82 now. It'll be a 90, but if I preach a long time, it'll be 104 by the time we get done. No, I won't, but anyway, I don't know. And we have a system worked on all the time. It was worked on this past week, so we're working, we're trying. But I just see you guys fanning, and that's okay. Fan if you need to, and it's hot, and I know. But that'll actually serve us well, because I'm going to ask you to do some things with me today, and it'll be fun. So usually I can outlast you, but I can outfound you because I'll admit that I'm lost faster than you will most of the time. Now there are some principles in this series called the Principle of the Path. It says. This is our third installment of that. Our first installment, the principle was this, that it's your direction, not your intention, that determines your destination. It's the road you're on that predicts where you're going to wind up. It doesn't matter how you feel about it or what you wish it would be. If you're on a road like 71 headed north, you're going to wind up in northern Kentucky. It's just a fact. You could wish you were headed to Florida. It doesn't matter what you wish or how you hope. If you're driving north on 71, you are not going toward Florida. Okay? Makes sense? So it's your direction, not your intention, that determines your destination. The second installment, this was last week, we looked at a passage, Proverbs 27:12. And the idea of that passage says this, that the wise see trouble coming and they prepare for it. They build a shelter. They get out of harm's way. They take action because they see trouble coming a long way off. But the fool continues down the same path and they suffer for it. You see, the wise people take action. They seek shelter. People who aren't as wise, or even foolish, as the Bible would say, keep going down the same path, and they wind up in a place of destruction and danger and destitution. It's just, it's how it works. We learned a prayer last week, and the prayer is this: God, help us to see trouble coming and give us the courage to take action before it gets here. So I'm just asking you, hang on to those two principles. And today, here's the key principle. Here's the big overarching idea. Submission unlocks direction. Submission unlocks direction. God won't give you direction without submission. We'll get into this a little bit more. So I want to tell you a little bit about my past to set this up. When I was a late teenager down in southeastern Kentucky, I had the privilege, because of my youth minister who worked at a whitewater rafting company, to get to work at that same whitewater rafting company. And I learned to love to take people on adventures then. And I still pastor from that way. I want to take you all on an adventure with Jesus. It's still kind of how I operate. That gave me great foundation for what we do. And the nice thing about being a whitewater raft guide is that rivers go in one direction. So for a guy that gets lost easily, this is a great job. Okay? Because you start at one place and it winds up in another. But I promise you, I had multiple people, almost every trip. We would get in the raft, we'd start down the river, and somebody would say, so, are we going to wind up where we started? No. Rivers don't work that way. Okay? I mean, serious. I mean, they were serious as a heart attack, too. They thought we were on like a ride at Kings Island or something. Like, you know, you get on at the ride, you go around, you come back to where you got on. No, the whitewater rafting works differently. You start at A, you go to B. Because rivers flow downhill, and they go downhill. That was nice. Because of that experience, I was set up to do a different experience at a youth camp in New Mexico a few years later. And a few years later, I got to be a backpacking instructor at a youth camp called Centrifuge at Glorieta, New Mexico. And this was a fantastic job for a guy that loves to be outdoors and loves to take people on adventures. It's really great. I would get to teach them all about how to cook over a little propane stove, and how to set up a tent, and how to get their sleeping bag ready, and how to find a good campsite, and how to store your food away from the tent so the cougars and bears didn't come eat you, stuff like that. So it was a nice gig, and the base camp for Glorieta is about 6,500 feet, and we would hike up to about 7,500 feet up on top of a ridge, and there was these high pine trees in the evenings there. As it would cool off, the wind would start to blow through those pine trees, and it sounded like waves on the ocean. It was fantastic. I was dating Julie then, my wife, and I wrote her a lot of love letters under those pine trees by campfires, listening to that wind blow. It was amazing. I loved being up there. The challenge was getting back to camp. Because as a lost person, and there were no real trails where we were, there's just scrub brush and pine trees, and you know, when a person that easily gets lost and you're leading a backpacking trip, that's a challenge. My saving grace was this: there was a ridge where we camped, and if you went that way, you would fall off the cliff. So I automatically knew you shouldn't go that way. So that limited my options. This is always a good thing. God has learned, limit Jeff's options, because he's likely to go the wrong way. So he limited me on this side. And the other thing I had in my favor is that camp was downhill. So I knew two things: don't go that way, and camp is downhill. And I had maps and compasses, and I had these topographical maps so you could kind of find your way. The challenge is you couldn't see above the scrub and the trees to really get markers sometimes. And so I promise you, in 10 weeks of camp, I came out down to Glorieta. I came into camp 10 different places. I mean, amazing like that. I knew it was down, and I knew you had to get there. And so in about a half-mile stretch, I would landed north and south, all in between every time. I always got them back on time for breakfast and all that. But man, it pressed every wrong button in me. My directional, navigational intelligence in the geographical world is really hard, because I can outlast you. I've already established that. And yet I got him back to camp every time. Now, what I learned is I needed markers outside myself. I needed something outside myself to guide me. So down was good. That was an objective, like we're going down. We're going in the general direction of the camp, and we're going to hit camp. Luckily, it wasn't too far. However, had the camp been further away, or we had to go up another hill or around something, it would have been really bad. I would still be wandering out there with a bunch of teenagers in backpacks 20 years later or whatever. It's crazy. So I learned a lot about being lost. And that's why I always have the sneaking suspicion I might be lost. So because I can outlost you, I can also outfound you. Because I'm willing to say, well, I could be lost. I might not be going the right way. And because I'm quick to admit that, I can find my way faster. Now, this is what I'm asking you to do today, to begin to ask yourself, is there an area in my life, in my marriage or my work or my relationship with my children, in my finances, that I might be lost? Is it possible that you might be off path somewhere, that you might not be going the direction you thought you were going, or you might not be where you think you are? Is it possible that in one of those areas you might be lost? If you'll admit that you might be, then you might also be able to be found, because submission unlocks direction. If you submit to the notion, I could be lost, then you can begin to be found. Now, this is real life. Now, this is where I'm really going to get, this is for wilderness survival. Now, I know most of you are like, well, I don't need wilderness survival. I just need to survive day-to-day life. But there's a principle inside here, so hang on with me. I'm going to take you into some wilderness survival things you need to know. This comes from an article, actually a news release by ABC News. And here's the title: Humans Walk in Circles When They're Lost. Humans walk in circles when they're lost. And it reads like this: if you've ever been lost and got the feeling you were retracing your steps, chances are you're right. According to a new study, humans really do walk in circles when they're set loose in the wilderness, at least on cloudy days. Worse, we don't even believe we're doing it when we're shown proof. You see, I can show some of you, I think you're off path, and you go, I feel like I'm doing the right thing. Okay, why do you feel that way? My heart tells me so. Oprah said I should trust my heart. Follow your heart. But what does the Scripture say about following your heart? It says, don't trust your heart because it's deceitfully wicked. It messes up all the time. If your only way of navigating through life is as I'm trusting my heart, I promise you it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough. But now think about this. I'm going to save your life. Someday when you're out in the wilderness, you get lost, this is going to help you a lot. A group of scientists at the Max Planck Institute for Biological Cybernetics in Tübingen, Germany, and by the way, I'll go ahead and tell you, all the names of this article of scientists that are German, so I'm skipping all of their names because I can't say any of them. So it's going to read a little weird at times because I'm going to skip their name because I can't say it and it would just waste our time. Okay? But they're Tübingen, Germany. I got somebody who could say them. You actually bring you up. You could read this. That'd be good. You have an exchange. So come here and help me. Grab that microphone right over there. Grab that red microphone. Yeah, this is good. I'll turn that on for you. See? Germans are really smart. They just know how to turn on microphones. I'm just kidding, man. That's funny. Tell us who you are.
I'm Jonas, and I'm a foreign exchange student from Italy, but I still speak German, too.
Yeah, he speaks a lot more languages than I've even thought of. I can't even say some of the language he knows how to speak. So it's pretty cool. So let's. When I point to a name as I get into this article here, you can help me. I can't get it to explain. So the researchers outfitted 9 people with a global positioning system tracking device and dropped them off in a flat forest in Germany or the Sahara Desert in southern Tunisia, and told them simply to walk for several hours in a straight line in one direction. 2 people walking in the desert during daylight veered from their course but didn't walk in circles. Did you get that? In sunlight, they didn't veer from the circle. Now, John Kupka, who plays in our band, said, oh, you know what, Jeff? Sunlight. Not S-U-N, S-O-N, light, get it? Like if you walk in his light, then you're not going to veer off the path much. I thought that was pretty cool, pretty good. A third person walking in the desert, this time at night, walked in a straight line until the moon went behind some clouds. Once the moon disappeared behind the clouds, all of a sudden he turned 90 degrees and turned 90 degrees again. And then Jan Sauerman, the lead author of the study, published today in the Journal of Current Biology, in the desert, you really can walk in a straight line if you have the sun to guide you. Sauerman and his colleagues decided to include a second forest experiment to see how well people could keep a straight course when they were forced to maneuver around objects. Not surprisingly, people in the forest fared even worse, and again, cloud coverage made a difference. Is it possible in your life somewhere that there's cloud coverage? That you're not seeing the sun clearly, that you're not getting direction. The 4 volunteers who walked on a cloudy day in the forest repeatedly went in circles, sometimes every 10 minutes. They didn't really believe when we showed them afterwards, said Sauerman. I think that's certainly a point to take away. People may feel very confident about the direction where they're going, but it's not certain. You may feel very confident. But what would God say about where you are? What would Scripture say about where you are? What would a wise friend say about where you are? If they were mapping your destination based on your direction right now, what would they say the outcome is going to be? How's it really going? It may be human nature to go in circles when you're lost. I think we've always thought it was a tendency we all have, said, yeah, see? Who'd have thunk it, okay? Who works, yeah, it's got too many syllables for me, man. I can't even, phonics didn't help me right here, okay? In search and rescue in Wyoming, and is also a former Knowles instructor. If there's terrain, then it gets complicated. Then people get funneled by the terrain, said, yeah. If you were in the middle of a big, flat, featureless place, that's when we tend to see this. Sauerman said his study was the first to test a tendency to walk in circles outdoors. However, other researchers have found people tend to walk in circles if they're blindfolded. If you look at all the shapes of the trajectories outside, the circles had a diameter of about 200 to 300 meters. Blindfolded, the circles were about 15 to 60 meters in diameter. Those circles could really, really be small. But Sauerman's work is intended to do more than make us feel inept as a species. Researchers have long been arguing over why we turn in circles, and Sauerman said the new study may rule out one of the leading hypotheses. For example, since the people in the experiment tended to turn at random in any direction, Sauerman says it counters the theory that we walk in circles without visual cues because we have one leg that is stronger or longer than the other one. So it's not just because you have a shorter leg. Okay, that's not what causes you to walk in circles. Instead, Sauerman hypothesized that we walk in circles because our brains accumulate faulty signals about the body's position in space. Then he goes on and talks about your vestibular system, which I'm not going to get into. He said all these signals have small errors because it's a biological system, and those random errors will accumulate, and sometimes they accumulate in one direction, Sauerman said. When we have visual cues like landmarks or the sun, Sauerman said the brain can recalibrate every so often and adjust for these imperfect signals. The standard advice for a person lost in the wilderness is to stay put, but not only do you get lost, I can't read. Okay? Yeah. But said people often don't listen to that advice. You should just stay put sometimes. Okay? I think the tendency is to move. We all want to find ourselves, but that makes it much more difficult for search teams to find a moving target. If you're lost and there's any chance that somebody's coming to look for you, I think the best thing is to stay put and be visible. And other experts say reading maps is the best way to help keep from getting lost and warn people who think they can rely on GPS systems alone. Billy Roos, Associate Director of Safety at Outward Bound, said he starts students out with maps alone first and then trains his students to use maps with compasses and rarely turns to GPS devices because GPS might fail. But with a map and compass, you've got objectives right there with you. Roos said it can take a while before people are wired and can easily translate the symbols of the map to the surroundings and envision the real surroundings on the map. Only then, and only after learning how to use a compass, would he recommend navigating with a GPS. Said he's even had to come to the rescue of people using the GPS device in their cars. GPS will get you from point A to point B, but it won't tell you in between there's a river bottom, a muddy dirt road, or a hole, he said. And that's one reason why he's pleased to see some science on how we walk in circles. To me, it's a reminder that we don't have an innate sense of direction. Said, when you go out in the wilderness, you have to have navigation tools. When you go out in the wilderness, you have to have navigation tools. Right? Thank you so much. You're a great reader of German names. Awesome. And so we tend to walk in circles. So what do? Here's some advice from wilderness training. And again, this is going to save your life. Some of my nieces are here on the front row. They're awesome. Children, if I could say something to you, if you ever feel like you're lost, listen to this advice. Okay? First of all, admit that you're lost. Admit, okay, I'm lost. That's why I get found faster than most of you, because I admit I'm lost faster than you do. First of all, admit it. Admit, I'm not sure. I got to check. Got to get some things. And then, here's the second thing. Don't just do something. Stand there. American advice is usually, don't just stand there. Do something. And then as we get busy and we start, the challenge with that is it doesn't work. So the next thing you do, first you admit it, and then second of all, you stop. Just stop. And in wilderness survival terms, stop means this. Okay? It means sit. Just sit down. T, think. O, observe your surroundings. P, plan. S-T-O-P. Sit, think, observe, and plan. Take a deep breath. Figure out where you really are. Try to get some objective sense of where am I really. And then if at all possible, stay put. Here's something you can do while you're staying put. You can light 3 fires. Not right together, but in a triangle. Because 3s in wilderness survival and the rescue teams, when they see a triangle of 3, to them it means somebody's in distress. So light 3 fires. And if possible, find some green branches to lay on top of the fire, because that will make them really smoky fires. Now, why would you want to do that? So that people can find you, right? And it made me think in spiritual terms. Sometimes we just need to pray, don't we? We need to send up a smoke signal to God and say, God, I think I am really lost. I'm not sure. Would you help me? Would you send rescuers to me? Sometimes he sends it in the form of a person. Sometimes he sends it in the form of a sermon or of a wise word from a friend or of a song you hear on the radio or from here on stage. Some way God begins to speak to you if you'll be open to direction. But light those 3 fires. Light them and then listen. And if possible, just stay put until God speaks again, until he shows up. If you have to move, if you have to go from the location, if it's not safe to stay where you are, then here's some things to think about. The sun always rises in the east, and it sets in the west. The North Star is always in the north. You need objective standards outside of yourself, outside of your heart, outside of how you feel to help you navigate. And it's best, once you determine a direction to head, to stay in that direction. Choose, based on your best understanding, should you go north, south, east, or west, and then stay true to that path and check your markers. Be sure, am I still headed east? Am I still headed west? Whichever direction you choose. Don't change your mind or you're going to walk in circles. Choose an objective standard outside of yourself and follow that path. Now the Scripture talks to this idea that submission unlocks direction. In Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, it says this. Actually, 3, 5, 6, and 7. This is what it says. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't trust in your heart with all your heart. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. And don't rely on your own understanding. Now, a lot of times we prop ourselves up with our own understanding. We try to navigate by our own internal sense of what's right and what's wrong and what's north and what's south. The challenge is, as humans, we tend to walk in circles. Now, if I took you to Tom Sawyer Park down in eastern Jefferson County, it's a relatively small park, maybe 30, 40 acres. If you get lost in Tom Sawyer Park, it's really not that big a deal. You're going to be found pretty quick, right? Just walk in a direction, hit a road. You can then follow the roads and just hike your way out, right? Not that big a deal. If I take you to Yellowstone Park and you get lost, it's quite a lot different, isn't it? It's a higher stakes game then. What about in life? If you get lost in life, man, you could be lost for a year or 2 or 10. You might never be found. You could spend eternity lost. But think about this. How would you like to lose an entire season of your life being lost? Off purpose, off track, off direction, miserable, wet, cold, alone. Would you really like to live that way? That's not God's design or purpose. But you can't be found until you admit you're lost. Until you stop. Until you pray. Say, God, I'm not going to rely on me and what I think and what I feel. I want to rely on you. And some of you right now, this is just what I know. I talk to enough of you, and we have enough coffee with you. And many of us, at many times in our life, feel very lost, and indeed are very lost. Scriptures tell us that without Jesus, we're lost. Without a true guide for our life, that we're lost. That we can't navigate alone. We weren't meant to navigate alone. We were meant to have a true North Star of Jesus. We were meant to have a Holy Spirit as a compass to guide us. We're meant to have the Word of God as a map to lead us, to have objective standards outside of ourselves. If you're wise enough to admit you're lost, then there's hope. That you might be found. Jesus promises if you'll reach out to God, that God will reach back to you. So don't lean on your own understanding. Admit, I think I might be lost. Reach out to God. And then acknowledging God in all your ways, in every area of your life. Are you willing to acknowledge God in your finances, in your relationship with your spouse, in your relationship with your kids? Students, even though you're out for the summer, when you go back to school this fall, are you willing to acknowledge that you need your teachers to help you and that you need God to work with you as you learn to navigate in your school? And your career, are you willing to submit to the principles that God has? Are you willing to submit to His direction? Don't figure it out yourself. Don't rely on your heart, rely on God. Trust Him more than you trust you. That's how it means to acknowledge Him. And then He will do what? He will make your paths straight. And wouldn't you rather go straight from where you are now to God's next stop on your journey? Wouldn't you rather go straight than to wander in circles and waste time? Because here's what I've learned, is that we don't have a lot of time. My middle child graduated from high school yesterday. So proud of him. But you know what it tells me about time? You got that much. It's what you got. So why would we waste one other moment being lost or going the wrong direction when we don't have to? We don't have to. There's a path that seems right to people, but it leads to destruction. There's following Jesus that leads to life. So, and it closes up. This Proverbs 3-7 says this: don't be wise in your own estimation. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. Turn away from the wrong path. Turn away from doing life your own way and do life with Jesus as your guide, as your adventure guide for life, as the one who can show you what's next and take you to the right destination. And this is really good news, isn't it? That outside of you, there is a true North Star, and that Jesus can take you where you want to go. But here's what you got to know, that submission unlocks direction. Here's a few things I want you to consider doing with this. First of all, it's a call to action. I want you to think about which areas of your life are you fully relying on God? In which areas are you trusting God's standards, His outside direction? In which areas are you doing that? And in which paths are you saying to yourself and to God, I got this. I'm all good. I don't need your help. Matter of fact, God, if you would, in this area of my life, would you just stay out of it? Some of us have cordoned off parts of our life, areas of our life where we do not want to hear from God because we know that the path we're on is a path that God would not approve of. Now let me say something about that. If God is love, and He is, and He loves you, and He does, if He says no to something you want to do, is He wrong or are you wrong? You're lost. You're wrong. He loves you. He sees more than you do. If you were lost in the wilderness, and you had the privilege of having a radio, and you could radio a park ranger on a high mountain in a tower near you, and you could say to that park ranger, hey, I'm out here and I'm lost, and he could begin to ask you questions, and maybe he could even locate you by the radio transmission. He could begin to say to you, okay, now here's what I want you to do. And he could guide you out to safety. Would you listen? Or would you say in your heart, no, I got this. I'm all good. You would listen, wouldn't you? How about spiritually? Will you listen to God? Who's in a tower? He says, man, I see more than you do. I know more than you do. My ways are not your ways. I can get you where I want you to be if you'll submit to me. Are you willing to amp your submission in all areas of your life? Are you willing to say to God, I trust you more than I trust me. I trust you more than I trust me. One last thing. For those of you who would like to follow Jesus but haven't been baptized, being baptized is a marker in your life when you say, you know what? God, I can't do life alone. I want to follow you. I want to follow Jesus. I want to be on his path and not on my own path. Would you consider being baptized as a follower of Jesus? And by definition, a follower follows somebody. And we're agreeing to follow Jesus together, right? Wouldn't that be cool? If this whole body, if all of us just get real with this, get real with God and say, God, trust you more than I trust me. And we follow him together, amazing things could be done in us and for us and through us. And it's just going to be amazing as we all learn to submit, because submission unlocks direction. And that's what we need in life, is direction, right?